Did the Florida Gators turn down bringing in Will Muschamp?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. And the Florida Gators may have reportedly turned down Will Muschamp. We'll see if more information comes out about that, but we'll talk about it, right? So a few weeks ago, let's say it was, I think, a couple of days before Christmas, Zach Abelverde hinted that, hey, Florida might make a hire, that if that hire is made, the fan base would go nuts and scream in a happy way, not like, God dang, like scream in a happy way. And everyone started speculating. Right? It became every coach you could possibly name became a possibility that was thrown in there. Fast forward to yesterday, and Zach Abelverde, who's with On3, puts out the war room that they write every now and then. And yesterday, he reported that the person he was talking about there was Will Muschamp. Okay? So he reported that Will Muschamp was a candidate to be the Florida Gators defensive coordinator, replacing Austin Armstrong. That's an important thing as well. That vacancy is there because Austin Armstrong has left and gone to Houston. We will see what happens with Ron Roberts, but that the vacancy to be replaced would be Austin Armstrong, and that Will Muschamp has been at Georgia for a little bit. He took a reduced role to a defensive analyst. The report was that he wanted to spend more time with his family, and so that is why he took the reduced role. But now he wants to get back into being a defensive coordinator. And unless I misinterpreted what Zach said, it seems like Will Muschamp reached out to Florida to see, hey, can I get back on the staff here? And conversations were had, and it didn't happen. And from what Zach said was just that it's no longer a possibility, that he is no longer a candidate. And that led a bunch of people to thinking, well, hey, is it a money thing? Like does he want too much money? There's not a lot of defensive coordinators, other coordinators of any kind out there that make a lot in terms of, compared to head coaches, obviously. But Florida also doesn't pay their defensive coordinators near the top, or their coordinators near the top, right? That could change. But Austin Armstrong was making $1.2 million, and I believe that made him the highest paid assistant. You would probably see more than that if you're bringing in we'll say, established name. You'd probably have to increase that pretty significantly. And so that would be a possibility, but I don't think that's what happened. That's what happened based on who I spoke to and what I was told. So, of course, Zach put that report out. I went and asked a few people, and from what I was told, it seems like the main reasoning that Will Muschamp was not brought in was that Muschamp would have wanted to bring in his defensive coaches, which isn't surprising, right? A lot of times when a coordinator comes in, you go, hey, I want to bring in my guys that can coach my defense the way I want them to coach. I know that I saw some people talking about that possibility and thinking that's like, I don't know. I feel like when I was reading some people's responses to that, it felt like they were like, who does he think he is? A defensive coordinator, okay? That coordinators want to bring in coaches that they can work with. That's one of the reasons that Florida had so much defensive turnover last year, was that they wanted guys that could work with this defense better. So there's that. But yeah, so from what I was told, that was a big part of it because it would be replacing defensive coaches, or it would be hiring new defensive coaches that would include replacing Gerald Chapman and Will Harris. Gerald Chapman, of course, your defensive line coach that you brought in from Tulane last year, and Will Harris, your DBs coach that you brought in from the Chargers last year as well, which, by the way, would have also meant that you're almost definitely losing multiple players on the defensive side of the ball, probably multiple players in those position rooms alone, probably a couple freshmen as well, which, Florida has brought in some pretty good freshmen. I probably lose some of those because it's like, hey, well, I just committed to you. I just signed with you. I'm going to request my release there. And so that's one of the main things that held it up to, again, from what I was told, based on who I asked, that's the answer I received, was that Bill Muschamp would basically run a whole new defensive staff, and that would replace Gerald Chapman, Will Harris, and lose players that would leave because of losing those guys. So I get it. And I will say this, I love Will Muschamp. I really do. Will Muschamp is one of the guys that, one of the reasons that I started really getting into scheme and defensive side of the ball at first. And so I love Will Muschamp. I really do. But I will say that I also really respect Billy Napier's approach of wanting to improve your defensive staff and entertaining Will Muschamp as a possibility, but also kind of saying, hey, I get it, he'd be a great addition, but we need some continuity here with position coaches that have proven their worth specifically. If there's some position coaches on offense or defense where you don't think they've proven their worth, as in just like in your opinion or Billy's opinion, whoever, then makes sense to go, all right, well, if we lose them, right? We could upgrade. But you've got two position coaches on defense that have been stellar since they stepped foot on campus, okay? And so they've proven their worth. So I really do respect Billy Napier's approach there of saying, hey, we want to keep the good position coaches. We want to keep the players that would leave if those position coaches left. Like, think about it. Caleb Banks spent some time at Louisville, didn't play. Then he came here, played okay. Then Gerald Chapman came in, and Caleb Banks put out legitimate NFL film. I get it, right? You'd want to keep that. Like Caleb Banks would be the first guy I could think of that would leave. And I think of that because if Gerald Chapman leaves, then Caleb Banks could follow him or decide to go into the NFL draft. And Caleb Banks came back for one more year of domination on the defensive line. And so you want to keep the guy that got you there, right? And so I look at that. Also, I will say from a slightly political standpoint, I can see why Billy Napier would not want, and this is me purely speculating. I'm not saying this that this is actually happening. I'm just saying I could see why Billy Napier would go, yeah, I don't want a guy that was the head coach at the University of Florida prior to me being here. When there's as many rumors that will go on if you lose a few games, when there's as many job instability rumors, you don't want someone there that has done the job before. He didn't do great, but has done the job before. So I get it. I do. Again, just from a political ego side, that every coach has an ego. You can't convince me otherwise. So from that side, I get it. But I will say as well, this roster right now is really good. You want to keep everybody you can. This roster that you've built is really good. Coaching is what has to catch up to the talent on this roster. And I'll tell you, in 2024, coaching was behind the talent on this roster. You win more games with better coaching. Specifically, you win the Tennessee game with better coaching. No doubt in my mind. That could have been enough to get you in the playoff. Alabama was almost in the playoff. If you are not, and if Florida goes 9-3, you win Tennessee, squeak another out. If Florida were to go 9-3, you can get there, right? So, couple games, That's the difference there. Texas A&M also win it with better coaching. Right there, you're 9-3. You're probably in the playoff with that schedule you had, considering Alabama almost made it with their schedule. I get it. Coaching needs to catch up to the talent on this team. We're going to talk about the talent on this team getting better with the addition of Adrian Maddox when we get back with Locked On Gators. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff game is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. And look, I remember the excitement of past playoff games, right? And we're getting to that point where it's the elite of the elite are now playing. That's what it is. It's not the 12 team right now. We've dwindled down. Now you're at the elite of the elite. If there's a game near you, look for prices. I'm just saying, just take a look. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I used them a week and a half ago to go see the Knicks beat the Wizards overtime. Hell of a game. Jalen Brunson, 55 points. We decided the night before. We were at the bar. I just opened Game Time to see what was going on. Saw the Knicks were in town. Figured why not. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Ensure Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And we went live to talk about this on Sunday night, where the Florida Gators made another addition to the transfer portal, or to their transfer portal class for 2025. And it was the addition of Adrian Maddox, a UAB defensive back. And I keep calling him the defensive back because I get that everyone's calling him a safety because that's what he's listed as. I'm calling him a defensive back, not as a slight, but because he's very versatile. And so that's why I keep calling him a defensive back. He could play both safety spots. He could play the nickel. And I love the addition. I'm going to be honest with you. I loved it. As far as just our general guardrails, then when we talk about the transfer portal here, we look for proven productive player at his previous spot and or a guy who just finished their first year in college. Adrian Maddox did not finish his first year in college. However, proven productive player at his previous spot, absolutely. And last year was his first time playing for UAB, which I bring up that clarification because I know people talk about if someone hits the transfer portal multiple times. I get it. Some are head cases. Some players are head cases with that. That is not how I interpret the situation with Adrian Maddox, because Adrian Maddox was at Alabama State and entered the transfer portal to go to UAB. And so he went to UAB, which is a step up from Alabama State. So he went to UAB, played in the G5, and now takes another step up to try to show what he could do against SEC teams, SEC talent, future NFL players. Again, we talk about this all the time with guys in the portal. A lot of times, guys from Group of 5 schools, when they enter the portal, it's not so much about someone going, man, screw this. Like, I should be playing right now. It's more so about, hey, or at least if we're talking about them for the Florida Gators, it's more so about, hey, this is a guy that wants to prove his worth to NFL teams and is trying to do that against future NFL players. And so that's how I look at it with Adrian Maddox, UAB DB, 6'3", 200 pounds, great size, great versatility, has played all over the place. And I talked about this on Sunday night as well. When DJ Douglas came over from Tulane, I was sounding the alarms on his missed tackles because they were glaringly obvious. It was very clear that DJ Douglas was a bad tackler. I did not have much confidence in him improving that. He had a 23% missed tackle rate at Tulane in 2023, a 26.5% missed tackle rate at Tulane in 2022, and then he came to Florida and had a 41.9% missed tackle rate and had 13 missed tackles in 2024. For those of you that aren't familiar with those numbers, that's a lot. That's a really high missed tackle rate. That's a lot of missed tackles. And it's genuinely just a really bad number to have. Florida had two other players with 13 missed tackles, one with 14. But here's the thing. They all played more than double the snaps that DJ Douglas played and had the same number of missed tackles as him. So when I was sounding the alarm about DJ Douglas's missed tackles, that was a big concern for me coming over from the group of 5 to the SEC. Adrian Maddox has a missed tackle rate of 17%, which isn't awesome, but it's also not bad. But I think that number is positively translatable. Like, I don't look at his missed tackle rate and say, oh, that's going to go up. It's harder to tackle at the SEC level. Absolutely. You're facing bigger athletes, right? You're facing better players. And with DJ Douglas at Tulane coming to Florida, I was like, that's going to be bad, because even on film, he looked like a bad tackler. For Adrian Maddox, it doesn't look as bad as it did for DJ Douglas. I'm not saying he's an amazing tackler, but I don't have the same concerns with Adrian Maddox getting involved as a physical player. I think that he'll be better. I think that his skill set will translate to the SEC and to the Florida Gators, obviously, more specifically. But I don't have the same concerns I had with DJ Douglas here. Yes, missed tackles, not ideal, but I'm not as nervous there. I think that Adrian Maddox is going to be more translatable, able to contribute, and be more physical toward the line of scrimmage. And I think the addition of Adrian Maddox is something that we spoke about on Sunday night when talking about Adrian Maddox when we went live after he committed, was once again, the Florida Gators, and by once again, I mean that we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago on the show, but the Florida Gators have not been super active in the transfer portal, right? They haven't gone out and brought in 20 guys, 15 guys. No, they haven't done that at all. They brought in, 6? But the transfer portal additions that they've made, the guys that they've brought in, they freaking nailed them. Honestly, like I'm a big fan of almost every transfer portal addition that they brought in. You look at the 5 they've brought in: Adrian Maddox, Kofi Asari, Deshaun Purdy, J. Michael Sturdivant, and Tommy Doman. The only one that I am actively skeptical of is Kofi Asari. And even then, I've said I trust the staff to get him right. Like, yeah, I didn't love his film. They make more money than me. They know more than me. One of us will be right? But again, I'm not going to harp on it because I don't think he's going to be a starter, or I don't think the expectation is for him to be a starter. And I trust this coaching staff to make those decisions, to make those calls. But Adrian Maddox loved the addition. Deshaun Purdy loved the addition. When we talked about the transfer portal class, I think it was last week, I was saying Deshaun Purdy, I don't think you could have handled quarterback better in the transfer portal. I think this coaching staff did the best possible job to add to the quarterback room in the transfer portal. I don't think you get better than adding Deshaun Purdy. So I love that addition. I did. You got him, J. Michael Sturdivant. Thought he was a fantastic addition. Florida has gone for quality, not quantity, in the transfer portal this year, and I think that they've done a great job at it. There's less scholarships available. You have to be more selective, but also in being more selective, they've been better. You look at the 2024 transfer portal of guys that came in for scholarships, and Asa Turner got hurt immediately. Clay Millen got passed up by Aiden Warner. DJ Douglas was a big whiff. Devin Manuel, backup offensive lineman, would have been needed, but he wasn't needed. Joey Slackman didn't work out at all. You had multiple guys that just didn't pan out when you brought in more bodies, right? But now you got a different case there. You've been taking less names, but you've been really good with the names you have added. I like it, right? So Florida's been killing the portal, and it's just fantastic to see them bring in some guys that should be able to contribute from day one in the SEC and hopefully make some big plays. We are going to talk about the Florida Gators basketball game because they do play tonight against Tennessee. Big game. We'll talk about that when we get back with Locked On Gators. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And like I mentioned, maybe you get a little lucky sometimes. Maybe you bet Josh Hart triple-double last Monday against the Wizards, and it hit. Maybe you bet Josh Jacobs and Malik Neighbors to score touchdowns on Sunday, and it hit. Maybe sometimes it just works out, right? And you could still get the $200 in bonus bets if that wins. So you get your winnings and $200 in bonus bets. It's beautiful. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And the Florida Gators have we'll say, pretty intense game tonight. They play the Tennessee Volunteers. It's in Gainesville, 7 p.m. Eastern time. I think it's on ESPN 2. Going to be a goodie. And if you are a basketball fan, if you're a Florida Gators fan and you're a Locked On Gators listener, we will go live after tonight's game. I will probably also upload this clip individually from the third segment of the show to also just, if anybody wants to care about just basketball, I'll probably upload this individually this afternoon. But the Florida Gators played last Saturday, and by last Saturday, I mean 3 days ago, against Kentucky Wildcats at Kentucky. For some reason, only playing once this year. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But they lost in that game 106-100 in a game where Colby Brea shot the freaking lights out. Shot 7 for 9 from 3. Brutal game. No other way to put it. That game was just killer. It felt like a kick in the nads. You know, that's how I'm going to describe it. It felt like a kick in the nads. So Colby Brea shot lights out from 3. On top of that, on the flip side, Florida shot horribly from 3 outside of Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin. All other Gators went 1 for 10 combined from 3. So that was just horrible basketball. Terrible. Really no good. Horrible. Very bad. And they shot horribly from the free throw line. Alex Condon went 3 for 7, I believe it was, or 3 for 8. Elijah Martin, I think, went 3 for 7. And then Walter Clayton shot 9 for 12, which is a fine percentage, or 9 for 13, which is a fine percentage, but way worse than his usual 91%. And you had a game where you missed 13 free throws and you lost by 6. That feels like a real kick in the nads as well, right? So that game was just horrible. And you lost by 6 on the road against a very good Kentucky team. And I know that we talked about this right after the Kentucky game as well. Florida was getting favorable whistles in that game, but they were also doing a good job of attacking the paint and getting to the line. So, yeah, they got some favorable whistles, specifically off ball, and the Walter Clayton three-pointer. That was just a wild whistle to call, or a wild whistle to blow, but whatever. But it was a game where it felt like Florida played poorly for the most part. They executed their game plan. They just didn't execute it well. You know, they got open looks from 3, just didn't hit them. They got to the free throw line, just didn't hit them. That part felt like offensively you executed your game plan. You got the looks that you wanted. You just didn't finish there. And so we talk about that and how it felt like a kind of back-breaking game, but you lost by 6 against Kentucky, who, again, really good on the road. Hard for me to be super pissed about that one. I'm more so annoyed at just being like, if you just played a little better, just hit your free throws. If anyone else wanted to contribute from 3, you got a decent shot of winning that game. But not what happened, right? Not what happened. Tennessee is the top team in the country, number 1. And you play them tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And outside of the Illinois game, Tennessee really has not played many close games. And I bring that up to say that this was a common conversation with the Florida Gators when they went into Kentucky. And it was like, oh, well, Florida hasn't played a close game yet, right? Florida's just pummeled all of their opponents, right? And that's true, but here's the thing. Or pummeled most of their opponents. North Carolina kept it close. Outside of that, it was pretty much just whack every time. But Florida hadn't really played much competition, right? North Carolina was the best team you played. You won by 6. Fine. But every other game you played really wasn't super impressive. Tennessee, on the other hand, has played some pretty good competition. Again, Illinois is a great team, and Tennessee beat them by 2. Baylor, pretty good team. Tennessee beat them by like 15. Louisville, pretty good team. Tennessee beat the absolute crap out of them. Arkansas, the other day, Tennessee beat the crap out of them, which, by the way, is Coach Cal's worst coaching decision he made, where he's like, yeah, we didn't even have a pregame shoot-around. We just kind of went into it. And a bunch of guys didn't show up, and we scored our least points allowed. I don't know what the hell possessed that man to go, we don't need a pregame shoot-around. I don't get it. But he's probably never doing that again. Just because, again, that was... I don't know how you make a decision that stupid, if we're going to be honest. As experienced as he is, that's just a stupid decision. If any coach is like, yeah, we're just not going to warm up, you should expect to get beat by 25 or whatever the hell it was that they got boat raced by, right? So, I bring that up to say, yeah, Tennessee's dominated their competition, but they've played pretty decent teams. Unlike Florida, who dominated their competition, hadn't really played much. Which, by the way, is another reason that I'm not super upset about the Kentucky loss, because that was your first true test, your first true elite basketball team that you're facing. And considering that was your first true test, it could have gone a lot worse than a 6-point loss on the road where your team didn't shoot well at all. And a bench player on Kentucky had a career day. So that's why I don't harp on it too much. I don't think this game will be nearly as points happy, we'll say, as Florida versus Kentucky was, where it was 106 to 100. I do think that you'll see a good amount of points scored, but not 106 to 100 in regulation. Yeah, I don't think it'll be that crazy. But I do think that we'll see a lot of second chance opportunities. Both of these teams are really good on the offensive glass. And that's relevant, at least, because, well, if teams play good defense and you're getting good second chance looks and second chance points, probably on putbacks, especially if you have a monster on the boards like Ruben Chinyelu, you got that. Probably going to be some points scored there where it's like, hey, you played great defense. It's just they got a board and put it back, right? Here's the thing. Florida, you need to connect on the 3-ball tonight, okay? And I don't mean Walter Clayton and Elijah Martin. I mean, another player needs to step up and make his threes, because right now Florida hasn't really had that much. Alex Condon's shooting a good percentage, but he doesn't shoot threes like that. He went, I think, 0 for 2 against Kentucky. But he's shooting good percentage, doesn't shoot threes like that. Will Richard, shooting kind of poorly from 3. He went, I think, 0 for 3 against Kentucky. Denzel Aberdeen, shooting pretty good from 3. I think he's at the 3rd highest percentage on the team, 2nd highest amongst the qualifying players. But he shot, I think, 0 for 3 against Kentucky and bricked a wide open look, like wide open. No one was even looking at him. And he just bricked it. Thomas Hawk, shooting well from 3, but doesn't have the volume behind it. It's Will Richard, right? Like, Will Richard needs to be the guy to step up, because he's going to get his looks, but he's got to connect them. You can't have I'm just going to kind of disappear in big games. You're going to be at home. It's a big game after you played poorly in a big game. You got to wake up a little bit. It's as simple as that. You got to wake up a little bit. I will say this as well. For Florida, I do think that there's a really interesting, I want to call it a possibility, but I also want to call it an opportunity here. So if you're not familiar with 2-foul participation, which those numbers are on kenpom.com, which amazing source. But if you're not familiar with 2-foul participation, that is when a player gets their 2nd foul in the first half, a lot of coaches will take them out and sit them for the rest of the first half. Okay? It's similar to in the NBA when a guy gets 2 fouls in the first quarter, 3 fouls in the second quarter. They usually sit till the end of that so that you're not basically behind the 8 ball, right? And so when it comes to 2-foul participation, so when a player gets 2 fouls in the first half, Tennessee, incredibly conservative there. They almost always bench a guy for the rest of the half. I don't know why, but when a guy gets 2 fouls in the first half, Tennessee almost always benches them. Florida, very different. Todd Golden has always said throughout the duration of his career that he's not going to use 2 foul participation, or a guy getting 2 fouls is not an auto benching, right? He's like, hey, I'm just going to trust you to not foul again for the rest of the half, but I'm going to use you, which probably the approach that I would think is the best approach. So Tennessee does not really, they're again, I was going to say they don't participate, but that feels redundant. They're very conservative with 2 foul participation. They also don't use their bench a ton. Starters play a lot for them, which for them should be a concern when we get later into the season, especially because right now those numbers are usually skewed more towards bench minutes. Because then now we're in SEC play, teams tighten up the lineup. They're playing their best guys as often as they can. And yeah, so Tennessee doesn't use their bench a ton, which to me says you don't trust your bench that much. And 2 foul participation, they're very conservative. If I'm Florida, which, yeah, I'm going to always try to do the strategy thing, get over it. If you don't like it, watch someone else. But if I'm Florida, I'm going to try to play attacking basketball early on, hopefully draw some fouls, and then you force Tennessee to go to the bench more often and earlier than they'd like to, and you try to take advantage there. And the second half is trying to maintain and build upon a lead that you will hopefully have at halftime. So that's my thought there, is try to get foul trouble early, try to then take advantage of their backups being in, and hopefully that'll help you in the second half. I mean, that would, of course, mean that their starters play a lot of the second half, but that's fine. Keep your lead. Defensively, I think the Florida Gators, there's 3 main keys here. All right. Chaz Lanier, their small forward for Tennessee, incredibly efficient scorer, one of the most efficient scorers in the country from anywhere on the court. Need to contain him. Like you need to slow him down. Whoever is going to be on him, need to slow him down whenever Denzel Aberdeen rotates in. I don't want him on Chaz Lanier. Okay? And I say that because I do want him on Zakai Ziegler. Zakai Ziegler is Tennessee's point guard, arguably the best point guard in the entire country right now. I think he's got the most assists in the country, one of the highest assist rates in the country. He's a great point guard. He is the facilitator of their offense, right? That's what he does. That's his job. Duh, he's the point guard. So he is the facilitator of the offense for Tennessee. And I think he has one of the highest offensive usage rates. So assists, shots, turnovers, whatever it is, end with him. And arguably the best point guard in the country. That's who I want Denzel Aberdeen on whenever he's in. Denzel Aberdeen's your best perimeter defender on the entire team. If you disagree, you disagree. But I think he's the best perimeter defender on the entire team. So if you have Zakai Ziegler on the court and you've got Denzel Aberdeen on the court, I want Denzel Aberdeen on Zakai Ziegler because I think that one of your key focal points needs to be every possession, stifle Zakai Ziegler early on. All right. Once he crosses half court, get on him. I don't think you need the full court press, but once he gets past half court, get on him. Get the ball out of his hands because he is the facilitator of this offense. He is the driving force behind this offense. He's the guy, right? He is your best player for Tennessee. He's the guy that's going to have the offense, facilitate the offense. He's your quarterback. Get the ball out of his hands so that someone else has to try to play facilitator. If they beat you doing that, they beat you doing that. But if you get the ball out of the hands of Zakai Ziegler and you're contesting every Chaz Lanier shot, if he's making contested shots, he's making contested shots, right? We saw Dalton Connect do it last year. If you're making contested shots, you're making contested shots. And I'm not going to get mad at that. You're getting a hand up, you're getting in their way, right? Zakai Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, the guys for this Tennessee team. Also, I mentioned this earlier, both of these teams really good offensive rebounding. Florida's defense, kind of mid defensive rebounding. You need to be more active on the glass. More active on the glass, limit those second chance opportunities for Tennessee. Because Tennessee's defense, not going to lie, they're really freaking good at forcing turnovers, okay? And they're really good at forcing misses. So as far as having additional opportunities go, you're probably going to have some more turnovers than usual. Florida had 9 against Kentucky. You're probably going to have some more turnovers than usual. Tennessee's going to get their offensive possessions that way, their extra possessions that way. Make them get them that way. Don't let them get them on the offensive glass. You got to box out, find your man, box out, and play sound defense there. Sound defense, sound rebounding. Okay? Can we do that? Can we beat Tennessee? Break their hearts right now. Would love that. Thanks. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more. Actually, we'll be back later tonight after the Florida Gators play the Tennessee Volunteers. We'll be back then to talk more Florida Gators. We will also be back tomorrow morning to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.